It was nearly midnight in Los Angeles when the lights at the Golden Fork restaurant began to dim. The wealthy clientele had already left, leaving behind half-filled crystal glasses and plates with leftover caviar. In the corner of the room, barely visible among the lined chairs and gleaming silverware, stood Jayden Carter, 22, dark-skinned, weary-eyed, clearing table 9 for the third time that night. He did this not out of perfectionism, but because he knew that as long as he was busy, no one would turn him away early. Jayden was one of those people the world couldn't see. He worked quietly, listened more than he spoke, and always said yes, sir, and excuse me, even when a customer's tone of voice hurt more than any slap. The only child of Diana Carter, a retired nurse, he learned from a young age that dignity wasn't synonymous with money and that true strength came from not hardening one's heart, even when life was hard. But that night, something different happened. As he gathered up the crumpled napkins, his eyes were drawn to the large glass window. Outside, the rain fell gently but steadily, forming small rivers along the sidewalk. And beneath the cracked awning, sitting on the ground, leaning against the restaurant wall, was a woman. Her brown hair stuck to her face, her wet, loose clothing barely concealing the belly of someone in the final days of pregnancy. Even in the pouring rain, she seemed to be burning with fever. Her eyes were lost in space, her arms wrapped around her body, as if trying to hold her own soul. Jayden stopped. He stared for a moment that felt too long. No one else noticed. Cars passed by. Wealthy customers got out of Uber Black and didn't even look away. One of the security guards had shooed her away earlier, but there she was, huddled, invisible again. Jayden's heart sank. This wasn't just pity. It was identification. It was as if he saw his mother years ago, exhausted from 2 consecutive shifts, her legs swollen and her eyes longing for a rest that never came. He remembered what Diana always said when they saw someone in pain. Son, if you have a choice, choose kindness. And that was what he decided. At that moment, there inside a restaurant that served lobster and champagne to those who didn't even look at the waiter, Jayden looked at his own lunchbox, stored in the kitchen, and without thinking twice, he knew exactly what he would do. Jayden waited for the right moment. The manager, Mr. Harrison, was on the phone, distracted at the reception desk. The cooks had already left, and the security guards were chatting outside, sheltered from the rain. With quick, discreet steps, he went to the small refrigerator in the back of the kitchen and grabbed the lunchbox he had put away earlier. It was his uneaten lunch, some pasta with sauce, 2 pieces of bread, and a bottle of water he had filled from the water cooler. It wasn't much, but it was all he had that day. Jayden wrapped everything in a brown paper bag and left through the back door, avoiding the cameras in the lobby. The rain was heavier now. Drops pelted the asphalt as if the sky were collapsing. In grief, he pulled the hood of his coat forward and walked round the side of the building to the sidewalk in front, where the woman still sat, huddled, almost motionless. As he approached, he slowly bent down and said softly, "Hey, ... Is everything okay? I brought this for you. It's still warm. Please, eat some." The woman slowly raised her face. Her eyes were red, not just from the rain, but from hunger, fear, and pent-up fatigue. She stared at the bag as if it were gold. "You ... Are you giving me food? Really?" he asked, his voice almost fading. Jayden nodded, smiling shyly. "It's not much, but it's from the heart." She held out her trembling hands and held the bag. "Like a baby. Thank you. My name is Emily. God bless you." Jayden knelt there for a few seconds. He wanted to say something, but didn't know what. The silence spoke louder than words. Emily opened the bottle and drank it quickly. An almost holy relief lit her face for a moment. But that moment of humanity was short-lived. "Carter." Mr. Harrison's harsh voice sounded like thunder from the front door. Jayden turned, his heart pounding in his chest. The manager was descending the steps like a furious general. "You went out during work hours to feed a homeless person. I saw it on the cameras, kid. This isn't a charity shelter." Jayden swallowed hard. He tried to speak. "Sir, she's pregnant." "I just shut up. Did you use company food?" "It was mine. I bought it with my own money." Mr. Harrison didn't even hear. He was already pointing his finger in his face. "You're fired. Now, go away, and take your cheap good deed with you. No right to defense, without even being called by name." Jayden looked one last time at Emily, who he watched it all in silence, curled up. The world seemed to have ended for him there. But what he didn't yet know Is that simple choice, offering his last meal to a stranger, was about to turn his fate upside down. The rain seemed to have gained weight as Jayden walked through the restaurant door for the last time. His uniform was still clean, but now it felt like it weighed tons on his body. The manager didn't even look back as he closed the door with a sharp click. Jayden stood on the sidewalk for a few seconds, his lunch bag empty, his heart overflowing with shame and uncertainty. He didn't know what to say to his mother. Diana was already counting pennies. Her pension barely covered the household bills, and that job, as bad as it was what kept the lights on and the rice on the plate. Jayden walked slowly down the street, aimlessly, his head full of questions the world seemed unwilling to answer. He sat at the nearest bus stop, where the torn canopy didn't stop the rain from pelting his shoulders. He pulled out his phone and checked his balance. $8. Not even enough to pay for a cheap Uber. As he stared at the soaked ground, the drops hitting the concrete seemed to mark the rhythm of his frustration. Why did I get myself into this? He wondered. Was it really worth it? Still with these doubts in mind, he heard a sound that made his heart freeze. Please. Someone. Help me. The scream came from the same direction he had come from. Jayden jumped to his feet. It was Emily's voice, weak, shaky, but urgent. He ran without a second thought, his feet slipping in the puddles, and his breathing quickened. When he found her, she was lying on her side on the sidewalk, curled up, her arms wrapped around her stomach. Her face was pale and wet, not just from the rain, but from sweat and tears. Emily, what's going on? Jayden knelt beside her, trying to shield her from the water that was already forming a small ripple. In the gutter, yeah, it's the baby. I think. It's coming, she said, nearly fainting. Jayden felt a chill in his stomach. He'd never witnessed anything like it, but he knew, instinctively, that he couldn't leave her there. No taxi would stop. No one in those clean sidewalks and elegant storefronts would offer a hand. The city was passing by too fast to see anyone suffering. He looked around. No car slowed. No one stopped. It was as if she didn't exist, as if they were both invisible. Jayden took off his coat, draped it over Emily's shoulders, and said firmly, trying to hide his own panic, "I'll get you out of here. You're not alone, I promise." With effort, he helped her to her feet. Each step she took was a gasp of pain. Jayden held her carefully, almost carrying her. The rain intensified, drenching them both. But what was really raining there was hope. Because even though he had lost everything that night, Jayden was about to deliver the greatest gift of his life. The streets were nearly deserted, and the sound of the heavy rain was the only constant noise, broken only by Emily's low moans with each step. Jayden held her tightly, his arm around her waist, the other shielding her head with his coat. Every block felt like a challenge. She could barely walk, and he could feel her body weakening with every meter. "Not long now, I swear," he said, more to himself than to her. Jayden's neighborhood was a 20-minute walk away on normal days, with dry weather and light footsteps. But tonight, with Emily about to give birth, and the storm turning the streets into rivers, it felt like an eternity. Her face was pale, her hair plastered to her skin, and her wet dress made every movement more difficult. But even so, she didn't complain. She trusted him, and that gave Jayden a strength he hadn't known he had. When he finally spotted the rusty street sign where he lived, he let out a sigh that mingled relief and fear. Getting home was just the beginning. Now came the hard part. They climbed the 3 steps of the wooden house with difficulty. The porch light flickered, but it was on. Jayden opened the door with the key hidden under the doormat. The interior was simple but clean. A worn sofa, a small TV, and the constant smell of drying herbs hanging in the kitchen. "Mom," Jayden shouted, entering with Emily in his arms. "Mom, help me." Diana Carter, a woman with a firm voice and a gaze that saw beyond the obvious, emerged from the kitchen with an old apron tied around her waist. Seeing the condition of her son and his wife in labor, she didn't ask questions. She just acted. "Lay her on the sofa for now. Jayden, get 2 clean towels, hot water, and the first aid kit from the blue shelf. Now." He obeyed without a second thought. Emily cried softly, clutching her stomach, murmuring between sobs, "It's going to hurt. I'm scared. .. Diana held her hand tightly firmness. "I've seen many births in my life, dear, and I'll tell you one thing. No woman who has fought so hard up until now will be defeated now. You will succeed." Jayden returned with the towels and water. Diana quickly prepared everything. She made a makeshift bed on the living room floor with folded blankets and old pillows. Emily was carefully placed there. While Diana examined the signs, Jayden knelt beside Emily, holding her hand. "You'll be okay, I'm here, we're with you." And in that moment, despite the fear, the pain, and the uncertainty, there inside that humble house, there was something powerful in the air, the certainty that lives were about to change forever. The small room was filled with a tense silence, broken only by Emily's labored breaths and the sound of water dripping from the leaking roof. Diana acted with precision. Her hands, still steady despite her age, moved with practiced calm. The towel spread on the floor became a battlefield not against death, but for the life that was about to arrive. "Jayden, more hot water, and wipe that sweat off her forehead," Diana said, her voice controlled but urgent. Jayden ran to the stove, refilled the pot, and returned. He knelt beside Emily, who was now trembling. She clutched his hand tightly, so tightly her fingers tingled. "It hurts, ... I can single quotes, ... she murmured, her voice breaking. "Hey," Jayden whispered, wiping her face with a damp cloth. "You've already endured the world outside. This right here, now, is you overcoming it. Breathe with me. In, ... out. Like this. That's it." Diana quickly examined her son and looked at him with a serious expression. "It's time. The baby is coming. It's hers now. We just need to help. Stay by her side, son." Emily was crying, but now there was more than pain in her eyes. There was fear of failure, fear of not being enough for this child on the way. But Jayden held her hand so firmly, so warmly it seemed to say, "You're already more than enough. Push, darling. You can do it," Diana said firmly, but encouragingly. The first attempt was a scream, the second, a muffled roar. On the third, Emily howled as if releasing all the pain she'd carried for years, not just physical, but lifelong. Diana didn't look away for a second, and then, a sound, fragile, thin, whiny, but powerful, a baby's cry. Diana carefully lifted the tiny child, wrapped in one of the warm cloths by the fireplace. Sweaty, tired, and completely at peace, Emily stretched out her trembling arms. Is she mine?" she asked, as if still in disbelief. Diana nodded with a warm smile. "She's yours, my love, a beautiful, healthy baby girl. You did it." Jayden could barely hold back the tears. Sitting beside Emily, he watched as she hugged the baby tightly and ran her hand through the child's wet hair. For the first time in a long time, he saw hope in the face of someone so broken. "She shall be called Hope," Emily said, her voice breaking, "because even in the dark, God gave me a light." Jayden squeezed his eyes shut, trying to contain his emotion. "Hope, it's perfect." Diana knelt beside them. "Do you know what this means, Emily? That your story isn't over. It's just beginning." And there, in that simple, cramped room, 3 lives were intertwined by an act of kindness, and the world would never be the same again. That night, no one slept. The rain eased outside, but inside Jayden's small house, a storm still lingered, of fear, but of pent-up feelings, forgotten memories, and a kind of silence that only appears when life truly changes. Emily lay on the makeshift mattress, Hope curled up in her arms. The baby slept soundly, breathing in small sighs that seemed to thank the world for having received her with so much love. Jayden sat nearby, propped up on the couch, shirtless, his hair still dripping from the rain. Diana, exhausted, was drinking tea in the kitchen, but from time to time she glanced into the living room, watching with that gaze of a mother who never completely rests. It was Emily who broke the silence, her voice almost a whisper. "Jayden, can I tell you something?" He turned his face immediately. "Of course, whatever you want." She looked at the baby, as if finding courage there. "I don't know where I came from, not really. The woman who raised me said she found me alone, on a road, when I was very little. So little I couldn't even speak properly. She named me Emily, but I never knew if it was really mine." Jayden remained silent, respecting her time. Emily continued, without taking her eyes off her daughter. "Her name was Ruth. Everyone thought she was my mother, but she never was. She'd made me sell flowers at the lighthouse since I was 4. If I didn't sell enough, well, the marks on my body told the story." Her voice trailed off. Jayden took a deep breath, but didn't, she interrupted. She needed to get it out. "I grew up thinking I was a mistake, a piece of trash. I never went to school. I never had a birthday. When I turned 16, Ruth said I was ready to really work. When I refused, she beat me until I couldn't stand and threw me out on the street. Jayden closed his eyes, holding back his anger. Emily wiped away a tear. I spent years sleeping in shelters, in stairwells, sometimes on the floors of public restrooms. One day, I met a guy named Caleb. He fed me, smiled, seemed kind. I thought he was someone different, until I told him I was pregnant. She let out a bitter laugh. He disappeared the next day. Diana, from the kitchen, just closed her eyes upon hearing this. She felt each word like a stab. And then, after that, no one wanted to see me anymore. They told me to leave. They cursed me. They spat on me. The last thing I ate before that lunchbox was a moldy loaf of bread I found in a trash can. Jayden leaned over and took her hand. You shouldn't have gone through any of this. No one should. Emily stared at him, her eyes full. But then you showed up, and your mother. You saw me. You really saw me. For the first time, Jayden squeezed her hand and smiled. We saw a person, a mother, a warrior, and now you'll never be alone again. Emily looked at Hope, then back at him. For the first time, she smiled from the heart. Thank you for not turning your back. You saved more than one life that night. You saved who I still could be. And in that moment, in that simple, loving house, the wound began to heal. The following days passed slowly, but with a kind of silent peace that no one there dared disturb. Emily was slowly recovering, and little Hope brought color to the interior of that once dull house. Jayden did everything he could to make sure nothing was missing, helping neighbors with groceries, cleaning yards, even cleaning car windows at traffic lights to save money. Diana, as always, made the impossible fit into the little, and Emily, well, Emily was learning to breathe again. One rainy afternoon, while changing Hope's diaper, Diana noticed something curious, a small mark on Emily's left arm, a pale, crescent-shaped spot. Have you noticed this? She asked, pointing gently. Emily looked at it and shrugged. I've always had it, ever since I can remember. Ruth said it was ugly and told her to cover it up with makeup when she went out. Diana narrowed her eyes and grew thoughtful. That mark stirred something old in her memory, something buried for years. Later that night, as Emily slept with Hope in her arms, Jayden and Diana were in the kitchen, sharing a cup of tea. Mom, you've been acting strange ever since that conversation with Emily. What's wrong? Jayden asked, frowning. Diana stirred her tea slowly, as if searching for words at the bottom of the cup. That mark on her arm, I swear I've seen it before. A long time ago, when I was still working as a private nurse in Beverly Hills. She took a deep breath before continuing. There was a family, the Sterlings, powerful people. The father, Kenneth Sterling, owned a chain of luxury restaurants. His wife died in a horrible accident, and their little daughter disappeared the same day. They never found her body. The only clue was a birthmark exactly like Emily's. Jayden sat up straighter in his chair, his eyes wide. Are you saying Emily could be a billionaire's long-lost daughter? Diana looked up seriously. I'm not saying she is, but the way she described her dreams, that lullaby about stars, the necklace with the letter K she lost. Jayden, it's too much of a coincidence to be just imagination. Jayden ran a hand over his face, trying to process it. What if it's true? Diana stood up slowly. So this little girl you saved on the sidewalk is the heir to an empire, and she doesn't even know it. In her room, Emily slept soundly, but even in her dreams, she seemed restless, as if her heart already knew that life, once again, was about to turn upside down. Only this time, maybe, for the better. The next morning, Diana woke before dawn. She was restless, her heart beating faster than usual. It wasn't just a mother's intuition, it was something deeper. She clearly remembered the day she held that little girl in her arms. Many years ago, in a private wing of a Beverly Hills hospital, the woman who called her Dr. Diana cried with joy as she cradled her newborn daughter. And her father, Kenneth Sterling, took pictures with impossible to hide pride. The little girl had a crescent-shaped mark on her arm, just like Emily's. Diana grabbed her coat and left early, while Jayden still slept on the couch, and Emily fed Hope in her room with sleepy eyes. She didn't explain where she was going, she just said, I'm going to look for someone from my past. It might be important. Hours later, she met Grace Thompson, her old friend and the Sterlings' former nanny. Grace now lived in Santa Monica, her hair gray and her voice shaky. but her mind still sharp. As soon as Diana mentioned the name Kenneth, Grace sighed and adjusted her glasses. He's never been the same since he lost his daughter. Do you remember her birthmark? Diana asked, anxiously. Of course. It was like a waning moon on her left arm. Why, Grace, what if I told you I think I found this girl alive? Grace's eyes widened. Her hand trembled as she reached for her purse. From inside, she pulled out a small, antique wooden box. She opened it carefully and revealed a photograph, a smiling 3-year-old girl with a chain around her neck and sparkling brown eyes. On the back, handwritten, Sarah Sterling, age 3. Diana froze. Her name was Sarah. Yes, Emily, she said. That wasn't her real name. That a woman found her when she was little, not knowing who she was, and she remembered a necklace with the letter K. Grace brought her hand to her mouth, overcome with emotion. Oh my God, ... It's her. The lost daughter. Kenneth's daughter. Immediately, Diana pulled her cell phone from her pocket. With trembling hands, she sent a short message to Jayden. Son, we need to talk. She really is who we suspect. I'm sure of it. Back at home, Emily felt something different. She looked at Hope and whispered songs she barely knew where they came from. A melody about stars, about someone who gently lulled her to sleep. When Diana returned, her eyes were red, but her voice was firm. Emily, I need to ask you something. Do you have a scar or mark on your right ankle? Emily was surprised. Why, is a small scar. I think from a fall. Why? Diana took a deep breath. Because I know exactly where it came from. Emily paled. What are you saying? Diana held her hand tenderly. Emily, you're not who you thought you were. You're Sarah Sterling, Kenneth Sterling's daughter, and he never stopped looking for you. Emily's eyes widened. Tears began to fall, unstoppable. I have a father. Jayden entered the room at the same moment. He didn't know what to say, but he walked over and took her hand. Yes, and he'll know you're alive, today. And in that instant, hope gained a name. Truth. The hours that followed were a whirlwind. Emily, or rather, Sarah, sat in silence, holding Hope in her arms, trying to digest each word. So many years without knowing where she came from, thinking she was invisible to the world. And now, she discovered she belonged to a family that never stopped looking for her, that she had a name, that she had a father. Diana wasted no time. With the help of Grace, who was still in touch with former Sterling family employees, she obtained Kenneth Sterling's personal number. She wrote a simple message, with a photo of Sarah's birthmark and an old photograph of the 3-year-old girl. I know where your daughter is. She's alive. And she has a daughter. It took less than 10 minutes for the phone to ring. Hello, this is Kenneth Sterling. Who are you? The voice on the other end trembled. I'm Diana Carter. I took care of your daughter when she was born, and today, she's in my house, with me, alive. There was silence. Then the sound of a man crying on the other end of the line. Tell me where. I'm coming now, please. 2 hours later, a luxury black SUV pulled up in front of Jayden's small house. It was as if a star from another world had fallen on the humble neighborhood. The driver opened the door, and Kenneth Sterling hurried out, with the desperate look of a man carrying nearly 2 decades of grief. When he entered the living room, he saw Emily sitting on the couch, holding Hope. She stood up, slowly, her eyes fixed on him, as if trying to recognize a memory that had lived only in dreams. Kenneth stopped in the middle of the room, shocked. My God, ... double quotes, he whispered. You have your mother's eyes, the same way you hold your head. He approached cautiously, as if facing a miracle that might disappear. Please, he said, tears streaming down his face. Do you have a mark on your arm? A moon-shaped mark. Emily slowly pulled up his sleeve and showed it. Kenneth fell to his knees. Sarah ... My daughter, my baby, you're alive. I ... I thought I'd lost everything. She cried, unable to speak. And then, on impulse, she knelt too, leaving Hope on the couch, and hugged the man tightly. Their tears mingled, as if all the past had been forgiven in that instant. Jayden, standing in the corner of the room, watched everything in silence. He felt a mixture of joy and emptiness. He had found Sarah on a sidewalk, nearly fainting, never imagining he was standing before the heiress to an empire. And now, here she was, meeting her father, discovering her roots. Kenneth looked at him, stood up, wiped away his tears, and held out his hand. It was you, wasn't it? You saved my daughter. Jayden nodded shyly. I just, did what anyone would do. Kenneth shook his head, overcome with emotion. No, son, no one did. Only you. And because of that, my life changed. Sarah's world was turning upside down once again, but this time, by the hands of truth, not abandonment. Jayden's house, once silent and forgotten by the city lights, was now teeming with life. Kenneth kept looking at Sarah rather, his daughter as, if trying to regain the lost years with his gaze. He cradled little hope in his arms, with a tenderness only true grandfathers know. And every time he looked at Jayden, his eyes filled with silent gratitude. That same week, Kenneth organized everything. A DNA test was done, but the truth was already there in the gestures, in the eyes, in the birthmark. The confirmation only confirmed what his heart already knew. Sarah was his daughter, alive, real, with a granddaughter in her arms. Kenneth wasted no time. He rented a car to pick up Diana, Jayden, Sarah, and the baby. He took them all to his Beverly Hills mansion, a home that, for years, had echoed with longing, now filled with the sound of hopes, laughter, and the warmth of the presence of someone he never thought he'd see again. Sarah received medical care, new clothes, updated documents, justice restored, the identity that had once been stripped from her. Kenneth didn't leave Jayden out either. He sat with him one afternoon and said sincerely, "You were unfairly fired, at my restaurant, for doing the right thing. And now, I want to make amends in the best way possible." Jayden humbly tried to refuse. "I didn't do it for anything, sir. I just wanted to help." But Kenneth smiled. "That's precisely why you deserve everything." He offered Jayden a position of trust, assistant manager of a new restaurant he was opening, a modern space with a greater purpose. The restaurant would be called Second Table, and the idea was simple. Every table deserves a second chance. Part of the profits would go to feed the homeless, and, at each shift, meals would be reserved for those who couldn't afford it. Jayden agreed, but only on one condition. "Diana is coming too. She's the heart of it all." Kenneth agreed with a smile. Sarah, now officially Sarah Sterling, also made an important decision. She would study to become a social worker. She wanted to help other at-risk pregnant women, as she once was. With the support of her father and Jayden, she began building a foundation named after her daughter, Project Hope. Months later, Jayden's house was already a beautiful memory. The family had grown not in blood, but in reality. And one night, as Jayden passed by the dining room of the new restaurant, he saw a young woman sitting alone, her eyes sad and wet from the rain. He approached with a bowl of hot soup and said, smiling, "You have a place here. We see you." Because he knew, more than anyone, that kindness is never wasted, that every act of love lights up where there is only shadow, and that sometimes a simple lunchbox, an outstretched hand, or a sincere look can change the entire destiny of a life. Jayden looked at the restaurant door and saw Sarah holding Hope in her arms, smiling, and in that moment he knew he was exactly where he was supposed.